Apex Gate was a monument to manufactured gravity, a silver spindle hanging in the black velvet void. It spun, slowly, tethered to the port planet Ravel not by steel, but by the shimmering, invisible threads of the quantum lattice. Ravel turned below, a swirl of industrialized continents and rust-colored oceans, the commercial heart of the Helion Collective. And the Helion Collective owned the lattice. They owned the roads, the routes, and the void between. Asher Vale, human, age 34, sat in a waiting room that smelled of purified air and anxiety. The chair was synthetic, designed by a committee to be precisely uncomfortable. It forced his posture straight, making him feel like a specimen pinned for observation. He wore his second-best suit, a graphite gray material that felt stiff and dishonest against his skin. His real clothes, stored in a locker down in the outer ring, smelled of ozone, sweat, and the faint, sweet decay of Mrs. Kellen's seaweed tea. He was here to apply for a job as a merchant pilot. A boring job. A stable job. A job that required clearance, access to the shipping manifests, and a legitimate reason to be on the flight decks of Apex Gate. He was also here to burn the Helion Collective to the ground. A faint, subsonic hum vibrated through the station, a feeling more than a sound. It was the lattice, the source of Helion's power. Asher felt the hum in his teeth. It reminded him of his sister, Iris. It reminded him of the official report Kari 9 mining disaster, regrettable loss, quantum flux instability. Asher knew that report was a sanitized lie. It was not instability that killed Iris and 5,000 miners. It was a choice. Helion had closed the route, prioritized the integrity of their lattice segment over the lives of the people trapped inside the mine. They had sealed the tomb while the miners were still screaming. His grief was a cold, dense thing, a singularity in his chest. This job was the first step toward pulling that singularity apart. He had spent the last 2 years hiding. After the disaster, he had scrubbed his licenses, fabricated a new identity, and vanished into the smog of Ravel's outer ring. He lived in a rented sleep pod above Mrs. Kellen's tea shop, hauling scrap cargo on short, unregistered burns. He had once been licensed to pilot the quantum lattice itself, a certification so rare it bordered on myth. Now, his application listed him as a mid-grade freight hauler with a clean record and a desperate need for stable employment. The downgrade was intentional. He needed to look harmless. The door to the interview room slid open with a whisper of compressed air. Asher Vale. The voice was not human. It was melodic but cold, like wind chimes made of glass. He stood. The woman who emerged was Athari. She was taller than him by a foot, slender as a willow branch, with skin the color of polished twilight. Her eyes were large, liquid black pools without pupils, reflecting the sterile lights of the hallway. This was Sila Kerr, cockpit recruitment manager for Apex Gate. Her reputation preceded her sharp, methodical, and utterly intolerant of ambiguity. She was the perfect, unfeeling gatekeeper. "Follow me," she commanded, not looking back. Asher followed her into an office that was mostly a window. The entire planet of Ravel filled the view, vast and silent. It was a power move, a reminder of how small he was. Helion's protection laws, their control of interstellar trade, their grip on the banks and the shipping lanes, it all started here, in rooms like this. Sila Kerr sat behind a desk of black, volcanic glass. She did not gesture for him to sit. He sat anyway. "Your file presents a curiosity, Mr. Vale," she began. Her voice was perfectly modulated, every syllable precise. "You carry certifications for heavy freight, yet your active logs for the past 2 years are sparse." "Took some time," Asher said, forcing the casual, rough-edged tone of a spacer. "Worked the outer ring, cash hauls, unregistered runs. You know how it is, keeping the engines hot. I do not, Scylla replied, her black eyes unblinking. I review official logs. The Helion Collective does not employ pilots who know how it is. We employ pilots who adhere to the lattice schedule. Your history suggests you are unreliable. Asher forced a small, tired smile. This was the performance. Unreliable means I had to fix my own navigation sensors. Reliable means I can do it for you. Look, I am just trying to get off the cash haul circuit. I want a steady berth. Scylla tilted her head. The movement was fluid, almost serpentine. You wear standard safety gloves, reinforced mesh, appropriate for a cargo bay, not for an interview. Asher glanced down. The thick, gray gloves covered his hands and wrists. A nervous habit, or a calculated one. Old habits. My last ship, the Lucky Scrounge, had exposed conduits. You learn not to touch metal panels. Here, the panels are safe, she said. The statement was flat, absolute. Please remove them. Asher felt the first prickle of genuine alarm. This was not on his script. He had worn the gloves to avoid this exact moment. Is that standard procedure for recruitment? It is standard procedure for me, Scylla said. I need to know who I am hiring. Your hands. Mr. Vale. He was trapped. Refusing would end the interview and flag him as non-compliant. Complying. Slowly, Asher peeled the glove from his right hand, the synthetic mesh making a slight tearing sound in the quiet room. He placed it on his knee. He did the same with his left. His hands were scarred, the knuckles thickened from brawls, the palms calloused from manual controls. But it was not his hands she was looking at. On his left wrist, sitting snugly against his skin, was a thin band of dull, ancient gold. It was simple, almost primitive, the kind of trinket a spacer might pick up on a dozen worlds. Engraved on its surface, almost worn smooth by time, was a simple alphanumeric code, S541. Asher had worn it for as long as he could remember. He thought of it as a jewelry registration, a worthless piece of data. Scylla Kier froze. It was not a dramatic movement. It was a cessation of all movement. Her slender, pale fingers, which had been resting on the glass desk, stopped. Her breathing, which had been a quiet, rhythmic whisper, hitched. Her black eyes fixed on the code. The silence in the room became heavy, pressurized. Asher felt the air thicken. The hum of the lattice outside seemed to grow louder, filling the vacuum left by her stillness. Where? She said, and her voice was no longer cold and melodic. It was a razor's edge. Where did you get that? Asher's rehearsed persona dissolved. This was not a recruitment manager asking about a piece of jewelry. This was something else. It was my father's. A family heirloom. The lie felt clumsy on his tongue. Scylla's gaze lifted from the band to his face. She saw through the lie instantly. She saw through him. The code. S541. It was not a jewelry registration. It was a match. In a locked, triple encrypted, eyes-only file deep within the Athari archives, a file Scylla had accessed only once. Illegally, that code was listed. S541. The Sin Survival Beacon Registry. It belonged to an Athari emergency castaway pod. A pod launched near the Kari 9 sector. A pod that had vanished. A pod that was classified at the highest level by the Helion Collective. This human, this rough-edged, lying cargo hauler, was wearing a sacred registry code linked to a missing Athari. Scylla Kier moved her hand, slowly, to the console embedded in her desk. She did not press the button to end the interview. She pressed the button for internal security. Mr. Vale, she said, her voice returning to its icy calm, though the stillness in her eyes was now terrifying. This interview is suspended. Please remain exactly where you are. Do not move. Asher felt his stomach drop. The airlock. The exit. He was 2 steps away. He could be out the door before she rounded the desk. But where would he run? He was on Apex Gate, the most secure installation in the sector. Suspended. Asher tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. Did I fail the glove test? Apex Security. Sayla spoke into the console, her eyes never leaving him. Recruitment Office 92. Send a containment team. Subject is non-hostile, but requires immediate detention for identity verification. Priority 1. Containment team. Detention. Asher stood up, knocking the chair back. The calculated risk of his application had just exploded. Hold on. Containment for a job interview, I think there has been a misunderstanding. I will just see myself out. You will not, Silas said. The office door slid shut with a heavy, final thud. The window overlooking Ravel was beautiful, but it was a long way down. That wristband, Silas said, standing to her full, imposing height, is classified Ithari property. You are in possession of a restricted artifact linked to a quarantine zone. You have 60 seconds before the team arrives to provide an explanation that does not involve theft. He was caught. Completely. He could not fight his way out. He could not lie his way out. They would detain him, scan him, and his carefully constructed identity would shatter. They would find the real Asher Vale, the man who was supposed to be dead, the man with the revoked quantum license. They would connect him to Kari 9. He would never find justice for Iris. He had one card left to play. Not the whole truth, but a truth big enough to stop the machine. Asher let out a long, slow breath. The rough hauler, the desperate spacer, evaporated. The exhaustion in his eyes was real, but the fear was replaced by a familiar, cold focus. The focus he used to have when he was threading a ship through the quantum foam. The gap in my record, Asher said, his voice quiet, clear, and utterly changed. It is not a gap. It is a redaction. I was never just a hauler. I did not steal this band. Sila watched him, her hand hovering over the security alert. Explain. I was a pathfinder. The word hung in the air, heavier than the station's artificial gravity. A pathfinder. The myths of the lattice. The pilots who did not just use the routes. They synced with them. Neural interface. The ghost pilots who could feel the quantum pathways. The ones who drew the maps Helion sold to the galaxy. Sila's eyes widened, this time in genuine shock. It was impossible. Pathfinders were legends, and they were all dead, burned out by the neural strain, or owned body and soul by Helion's deepest research divisions. Pathfinders do not retire, she whispered, testing the word. They are consumed. Your file says revoked. I quit, Asher said. The lie was close to the truth. The Kari 9 incident. I was running a survey route nearby. I saw the flux. I saw the lattice shear. I saw the gates close when they should have opened. He looked away, the memory sharp and bitter. I had enough. I pulled the plug, used my access to scrub my own existence. I wanted to disappear. He was lying. He had not just seen it. He had been part of it. And he had not quit because he had enough. He had quit because he knew Helion had murdered his sister, and he was coming back to prove it. The door chimed. The security team was outside. Sila looked from the door to the man standing before her. A man who should not exist, claiming a title that was a death sentence, wearing a code that was a mystery she needed to solve. You are lying, she said. I am, Asher said, meeting her gaze. But not about being a pathfinder. Sila pressed a button on her console. Security team, stand down. Hold your position. The subject is cooperating. She looked at Asher, her Ithari face an unreadable mask of cold calculation. Sit down, Pathfinder. We have more to discuss. The security team was a silent, armored promise outside the sealed door. Asher Vale sat back down. The balance of power in the room, once tilted so heavily against him, had shifted. It was no longer an interview. It was a negotiation, and he had just played a card he could not take back. Scylla Kerr stood for a long moment, her tall, Athari frame silhouetted against the vast backdrop of Ravel. "If you are what you claim," she said, her voice low and measured, "you are either a corporate asset or a ghost. The Helion Collective does not permit ghosts." "I am very good at being quiet," Asher replied. Scylla moved to her console. "Your claim is simple to verify. The neural interface port. All Pathfinders have them." "Show me." Asher turned his head, pulling back the stiff collar of his suit jacket. At the base of his skull, just below the hairline, was a small, dark circle of polished composite. It was a data jack, but it was ruined. The edges were melted, scarred tissue puckered around the port, as if it had been sealed by a plasma torch. "It is decommissioned," Asher said. "I burned it out myself. I told you. I quit." Scylla studied the scar. A self-inflicted wound, painful and permanent. That was the idea. "Yet you are here," she countered, "applying for a job that puts you right back at their door. Why, even ghosts need to eat. Manager Kerr, and Ravel is not cheap." Scylla turned away from him, her attention returning to the console. The security team was still waiting. She had a choice: detain him, and Helion Corps would take over, burying him and whatever truth he carried. Or, "Wait here," she commanded. She did not look at him. "Do not move." She partitioned a section of her screen, opening a deep archive file that required 3 separate biometric authentications. It was not a Helion file. It was the Etheri archival log. She bypassed the station's main network, routing her query through an encrypted Athari diplomatic channel. Her slender, pale fingers moved with blurring speed. She typed the code, S541. The file that appeared was heavily redacted. She had seen it before, but now she looked at it with new, terrified eyes. Artifact S541, SIN Registry, Emergency Beacon, Source Athari Life Pod, Class Nursery, Origin Sector Kari 9, Status Active Post-Incident, Retrieval Signal Positive, Pod Recovered, Retrieval Agent Data deleted by Helion Corps Directive, Disposition Data deleted. Scylla stared at the 2 words, Data deleted. Helion did not just delete personnel files for minor infractions. They erased history. The pod had been recovered, after the disaster, from the quarantine zone. And the person who pulled it out, their identity was scrubbed. A human pathfinder, claiming to be near Kari 9 when it happened. A man who wore the pod's registry code on his wrist. She felt a cold dread, but also a sliver of something else. A terrible, sharp hope. She closed the file. She looked at Asher, who was watching the planet below, his face a mask of false calm. "You were not just nearby," Scylla said. Asher turned. "I was close enough." "You were the retrieval agent." Asher's calm did not break, but his eyes hardened. "I do not know what you are talking about. I was running a survey. I saw the flux." "Do not lie to me, Pathfinder," Scylla hissed, her composure finally cracking. "The file is sealed, but the connection is obvious. You pulled that pod from the quarantine zone." He did not answer. His silence was the answer. Scylla pressed the comms. "Security team, stand down. Return to your posts. The interview is continuing." She looked at Asher. The dynamic had changed completely. "I do not know what Helion is hiding," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "But that pod, S541, is Athari, and you are a human who erased his own past. You are a paradox, and I do not trust paradoxes." Then why am I not in a containment cell? Asher asked. Because your claim of being a Pathfinder is absurd. But if it is true, she left the sentence hanging. If it is true, you are the most dangerous person to walk onto this station in a decade. I need to know. You will wait here. An escort will collect you. She left the office, sealing him inside. Asher was moved to a small, windowless waiting room. This one smelled of disinfectant and processed air. He was left alone for 3 hours. He measured the time by his own steady pulse. He was not panicked. He was calculating. He had played his card. Now, she was deciding whether to call his bluff or join the game. Finally, a different security guard, this one looking bored. Not tactical, opened the door. Kerr says you are clear. You are on probationary status pending review. You are restricted to Deck 5 accommodations. He was not out. He was being kept. He was escorted to a sterile habitation module. The door locked behind him. He was a prisoner, but one with a bed and a fresh change of clothes. He checked the room. Standard Helion issue. One comms panel. He accessed it. It was locked down. Public channels only. Asher smiled. He went to the room's ventilation grate, popped it open with his fingernails, and pulled a small, illegal bypass device from his boot heel. He jammed it into the panel's auxiliary port. The screen flickered, and a command line appeared. He typed a local access code, one that was not in any Helion database. It was a maintenance network backdoor, a gift from an old friend. The comms chimed twice, then connected. A woman's face appeared, framed by greasy copper hair, and a pair of augmented reality goggles pushed up on her forehead. She was chewing synthetic jerky, the motion vigorous. "You are a bastard, Ash," she said, her voice a cheerful grumble. "Hello, Tamsin. I missed you too," Asher said. Tamsin Reed was the best maintenance engineer on Apex Gate, which meant she was the best in the system. She was the only person alive who knew he was a Pathfinder. She was the one who had helped him fabricate his new identity, who had helped him die. "Probationary status," she said, tapping at a console just out of view. "Restricted to Deck 5. You really kicked the hornet's nest. What did you do? Spill a drink on an executive?" "I applied for a job," Asher said. "It got complicated. I met the manager, Sila Kerr." Tamsin stopped chewing. "Ouch. The Ice Queen. She is a Thari. They say she can smell a lie." "She can. I need to know what she is doing." "She called off security, but she has me on a leash. What is her play?" "You are asking me," Tamsin said, gesturing to the pipes behind her. "I fix pressurized conduits. Ash, I do not read Ethari minds. You read networks. Tam. That is all I am asking. A soft hack. What is she looking at? And I need the station security schedules for the next 48 hours, especially the routes near the cockpit access." Tamsin sighed, a loud, dramatic noise. "You are going to get me fired. Again. The last time you asked for a soft hack, I ended up rerouting a waste freighter to the executive suites." "I am not," Asher said. "This is for Iris." The humor vanished from Tamsin's face. The name hung in the air between them. "Okay, fine. For Iris. But you owe me. Big time. And I want real coffee. Not the synthesized crap from the outer ring. I mean it. The real beans. Get me the data, Tam, and I will buy you the plantation." "Uh-huh. I am in her system now. She is... Oh, that is interesting. What? She is running a trace, a deep one, on an artifact code. S541, your wristband." Tamsin zoomed in, her eyes focusing on something in her augmented reality display. "And she just got a soft warning." "A warning from who?" "From them," Tamsin said, her voice dropping. "Hellion Core, Level 5 sensitivity. A polite, do not touch message. Ash, what did you get yourself into? Asher felt the familiar, cold hum in his teeth. Hellion Core. It is confirmed, then. What is confirmed? That they are hiding something. Tell me, Tam, what is the biggest, most powerful, most unbreakable thing Hellion owns? The lattice, Tamsin said. Obviously, it is the only road in town. No, Asher said. Their contracts. The unbreakable contracts they use to protect ports like Ravel. The ones that give them control of banking, shipping, and law. The ones that make them judge, jury, and executioner. I know, Tamsin said. They are the system. You cannot fight the system, Ash. You can, Asher said, if you know where it is weakest. And where is that? Asher looked at his own reflection in the dark screen. Me. The next morning, the guard woke him. He was escorted back to Ciela Kerr's office. The mood was different. The pretense of the interview was gone. The air was thin and sharp. Ciela did not look up when he entered. The Hellion Collective sent me a message last night. Mr. Vale. A warning. They strongly suggested I stop inquiring about your wristband. That is not good for a job application. I assume, Asher said, remaining standing. It is not. It confirms you are dangerous, but it also confirms you are important. She finally looked at him, her black, bottomless eyes analytical. I have a question, a simple one. You spent 2 years hiding. You faked your death. You burned your neural port. You built a shell identity as a nobody. Why would you wear that band? It is a beacon. It connects you directly to the one event you are supposedly running from. It is stupid. Asher smiled. It was the first genuine expression she had seen from him. It is cheap jewelry. Manager Kerr, my father's. Remember, he said, the lie now an open joke between them. And it brings me good karma. He held up his wrist. The gold was dull. But the real reason, he continued. People rarely look closely. They see what they expect to see. They see a spacer with a trinket. They do not see a code. They do not see a history. Until you... Ciela considered this. A gamble. Hiding in plain sight. The best way. But you looked closely. Yes, Ciela said. She touched a small, hidden locket at her own throat. A movement so slight, Asher almost missed it. That code, S541. It is not just an artifact to me. It is linked to a loss, a relative, someone who was lost in the Kari 9 sector. Asher looked at her, the Ice Queen. Her coldness was not a function of her job. It was armor. She was grieving, just like him. I am sorry, Asher said, and he meant it. I do not want your sympathy, she said, her voice hardening again, the moment of vulnerability gone. I want to know if you are a liar, or if you are a legend. Hellion has warned me away. That means I must move forward. I am approving you for a probationary flight. Just like that. No, not just like that. This is not a job offer. This is a test. You will fly a standard brick hauler. A short route, deck to planet to deck, simple. And I will be monitoring every single data point from your ship. Your engine output, your G-force compensation, your flux navigation. Hellion artificial intelligence sets the standard. They are flawless. We will see how you compare to flawless. And if I pass, if you pass, Ciela said, we will discuss what happens next. And if I fail, if you are lying about being a pathfinder, Ciela said, and you are just a common thief who stumbled on that band, the neural interface on that ship will fry your brain. Hellion ships are not kind to pilots who lie about their credentials. A pass-fail test. Then, Asher said, I like the stakes. Report to Hangar Bay 12 at 1400 hours, Sila said. Do not be late, Mr. Vale, and do not disappoint me. Hangar Bay 12 was loud and smelled of refined fuel and hot metal. The ship was exactly what she had promised a standard Hylian brick hauler. It was ugly, functional, and powerful, a testament to efficiency over elegance. Asher climbed into the cockpit. It was sterile, designed for an artificial intelligence, with manual controls included as a legal afterthought. He strapped himself into the pilot's chair. His comms unit chirped, a tiny, illicit sound. Audio check, Tamsin's voice said, filtering through the private channel he had patched. You look good in orange, Ash. It brings out the panic in your eyes. I am fine, Tam, Asher said, his hands moving over the console, his movements sure and economical. He was wearing a standard Hylian flight suit. It felt wrong, like a costume. Just try to look normal. Sila Kerr is watching this feed from the tower. The whole flight is being logged for review. And Ash, yes, do not show off. When do I ever show off? Every time you fly, Tamsin said. Just be a brick hauler. Move the brick. Do not be a legend. Copy that, Asher said. But he was already smiling. He opened the channel to the tower. Tower, this is Hauler 66 Alpha. Probationary pilot Vale requesting launch clearance for test route. Sila's voice, cold and professional, came back instantly. 66 Alpha, you are cleared. Engage lattice interface on my mark. Mark. Asher's hands flew. He did not use the automated sequence. He bypassed it. He pushed the ship off the magnetic clamps manually, fired the maneuvering thrusters in a short, sharp burst, and cleared the station's gravity well in half the expected time. He is hot-dogging, Tamsin muttered on the private channel. Tower, engaging lattice, Asher said. This was the moment. The chair hummed as the interface protocols activated. He could not use his burned-out neural port. He had to fly manual. But manual for a Pathfinder was different. He closed his eyes. He felt the hum, the station, the ship, the void. It all dissolved. He was not in a cockpit. He was in the lattice. He could feel the streams of quantum data, the bright, shimmering threads that Hylian used as roads. He could feel the other ships, cold, heavy slugs of data moving sluggishly through the foam. He felt the destination Ravel's surface, a port on the other side of the planet. The autopilot wanted to take a standard approach, a 90-degree insertion, compensating for planetary rotation with 3 separate deceleration burns. It was safe. It was slow. It was inefficient. Asher put his hands on the controls. The artificial intelligence tried to fight him, a red warning flashing on his console. Manual override. Deviation detected. I see you, old friend, Asher whispered. He did not fight the artificial intelligence. He danced with it. He fed it telemetry that made it think it was on its designated route. But his hands were moving, making micro-adjustments the artificial intelligence could not comprehend. He was not just flying the ship. He was sympathizing with it. He felt the engines, felt the strain on the hull. He anticipated the quantum turbulence before the sensors did. He did not take the 90-degree insertion. He took a 75. He used Ravel's own gravity to assist his deceleration. He folded his path between the quantum threads, finding a shortcut, a harmony in the math that only he could see. The ship did not shudder. It did not strain. It did not drop. It glided. It was, as Tamsin had said, like ice skating. In the control tower, Sila Kerr watched the telemetry. Her black eyes were wide. The ship's fuel efficiency was at 120%. The G-force inside the cabin was non-existent. The arrival time. The ship had completed its 30-minute route in 9 minutes. The system was flashing warnings. Deviation, route unstable, pilot error, but the ship was on the landing pad, perfectly centered. Manager Kerr, her assistant asked, looking pale. Is that an error? The telemetry must be corrupted. No pilot can achieve those numbers. Scylla did not speak. She was watching the ship's internal camera. Asher Vale was unbuckling, stretching his arms as if he had just woken from a nap. Tamsin, Asher said on his private channel. How was that normal enough? There was a long silence. Then Tamsin's voice came back, quiet, full of awe. Gods, Ash, it is true. You used to be a legend. Scylla shut down the feed. She stood, walking to the great window overlooking the port. He was real. He was not a liar. He was a pathfinder. He was a man who could bend the lattice to his will. He was a man who had been at Kari 9. He was a man who was tied, somehow, to the missing Athari pod. Scylla touched the locket at her throat. Inside it was a microscopic data crystal. On it was a single image, a small Athari child. Her own. A child who had been visiting relatives in the Kari 9 sector. A child who had never come home. This human, this dangerous, arrogant, genuine, broken man. He was not just a curiosity. He was the only person in the universe who might know what happened to her. She realized her hands were shaking. She, Scylla Kerr, the Ice Queen, was shaking. This changed everything. Asher Vale was escorted from the landing pad, not to a detention cell, but back to his assigned quarters. The walk was silent. The guards who flanked him were no longer tense, but they were not relaxed either. They were confused. A pilot who broke every rule of lattice navigation and set efficiency records that the artificial intelligence deemed impossible was an anomaly. And anomalies were problems. He sat on the thin mattress for an hour. The silence of the room, a stark contrast to the thrumming harmony he had felt inside the lattice. He had shown his hand. He had proven he was a pathfinder. Now, Scylla Kerr held all the cards. His comms panel, still patched with Tamsin's illegal bypass, chimed. He accepted the call. Tamsin Reed's face appeared. Her augmented reality goggles dark, her expression unreadable. So, she said, her voice flat. That was not showing off. That was terrifying. Ash, you did not just break the guidelines. You rewrote the physics. I was being efficient, Asher said, rubbing his wrist. The gold band felt warm. You were being a ghost, she corrected. And now the whole station is talking. The logs are corrupted. The autopilot is demanding a diagnostic. And Scylla Kerr has been in a locked room with the station director for an hour. You wanted her attention. You got it. I need to know what she is looking at. Tam. But not just her. I need to know about the pod, S541. Where is the file? Tamsin chewed on her lip. Her eyes scanning data streams only she could see. You are not going to like it. I ran the trace on the code, S541. The Helion core warning was just the start. The retrieval data, the pod's disposition. It is not just deleted. It is moved. It is held in a place called Vault Crest. Vault Crest, Asher repeated. A physical server. You wish. It is a deep archive, fully isolated from the main network, probably sitting in null orbit somewhere. It is where they keep their dirtiest laundry. The real Kari 9 report is probably in there. Executive malfeasance. Illegal weapons contracts. You name it. How do we get in? We do not, Tamsin said flatly. You do not. Nobody gets in. It is triple encrypted and requires a physical key for authentication. A physical key. Not just any key. I cross-referenced the security protocols. It is an older system, one they built before they trusted artificial intelligence. It requires a specific algorithmic key, based on, get this, a gold code registry. Asher looked at the band on his wrist. S541. My band. Your band, Tamsin confirmed, her voice grim. It is not just the registry number, Ash. It is the key, or part of it, a gold code authentication. So Helion did not just recover that pod, Asher said, the pieces clicking into place, cold and sharp. They kept it. They archived it. And they used its registry as the lock on their darkest secrets. Ash, Tamsin said, her voice dropping. This is not about justice for Iris anymore. This is the core of the whole damn collective. You go near this. You are not just a ghost. You are a target for extermination. I have been a target before, Asher said. Keep digging. Tam, find me where that vault is. The call cut. Asher was left alone with the hum of the station. He was closer than he had ever been. He had the key, but Sila Kerr had the door. An hour later, his door chimed. Not a guard. A private summons. Sila Kerr requests your presence. Observation Deck 9. Deck 9 was almost deserted. It was a high-G section, primarily for sensor arrays, with one small bubble of reinforced glass pressed against the void. Ravel was a crescent of light below. She was there, standing with her back to him, watching the planet. She was not in her severe managerial uniform. She wore a simple, dark gray Ithari garment. Without the armor of her office, she looked impossibly slender, fragile. Your flight was illuminating, she said, her voice quiet. It did not echo in the small space. It was a test, Asher said. Did I pass? You proved you are a pathfinder, she replied, turning. Her face, usually an impassive mask, was etched with a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. The Ice Queen was gone. And you proved you are a fool. To show that much skill, that much connection. The system has you flagged. Asher Vale. You are no longer just an anomaly. You are a threat. I did what I had to do. Yes, she said. She walked closer to him, her black eyes searching his face. You did. Now I must do what I have to do. The warning from Helion Core was not a suggestion. It was an order. I am to hand you over to internal affairs for debriefing and reassignment. Asher tensed. Reassignment. That sounds permanent. It is. You would be taken to a black site, your mind stripped for its knowledge of the lattice, and then you would cease to be. She paused. I logged your test flight as a data error, a sensor malfunction caused by a micrometeorite strike. Your records are clean, for now. Asher stared at her. You protected me. Why? Sila looked away, back to the void. She touched the locket at her throat. The pod. S541. You asked me if it was connected to a relative. A loss. You said it was... It was a lie, she said, her voice breaking, just for a moment. It was not a relative. It was my daughter. The confession hung in the vacuum-sealed room. Asher felt the floor drop out from under him. Her name was Arian, Sila whispered, her eyes closed. She was small. She had my eyes. She was visiting my family on a mining outpost near Kari 9. When the disaster happened, they put her in the pod, a nursery pod. It was the only one that launched. She opened her eyes. They were swimming with a pain so cold it burned. I tracked the beacon, S541. I tracked it until the signal was encrypted and blocked by a Helion quarantine field. They told me it was lost, that it had burned up on re-entry. They told me to grieve and move on. But you saw my wristband, Asher said, understanding. I saw a ghost, she said, wearing the tombstone of my child. I believed she was dead. But the file you and I both know about. It says, retrieval signal positive. The pod was recovered, and the Helion Collective. The company I have served for 15 years lied to me. They did not just lie, Asher said, his voice hard. They took her, Vault Crest. They are holding the pod data there. Sila's head snapped up. How do you know that name? My friend. The one who helped me disappear. She found it. The vault where they keep the records. It requires a gold code to open. My code. Sila looked from the band on his wrist to his face. The grief in her eyes was overlaid with a new, terrifying intensity. A predator's focus. They took my daughter, she said. They took her, and they buried the truth. They took my sister, Asher said, his own anger surfacing, raw and cold. Iris. She was a geologist at Carry 9. She was not in the first blast. She was in the tunnels, sending data, coordinating the evacuation. She was alive. He stepped closer to Sila. I was a pathfinder, yes. I was on a deep survey run, charting new routes. When the flux hit, I felt it. The lattice screamed. I diverted. I was almost there. And then, they shut the gate. Helion control. They shut the regional lattice gate. They had to, Sila said. The corporate answer reflexive. To protect the integrity of the network. To stop the flux from spreading. They did not have to. Asher's voice was a low roar. The flux was stable. It was a resonance cascade, not a failure. I could have held it. I told them I could hold it. I could have woven a bypass. I could have kept the gate open for another 10 minutes. That is all they needed. 10 minutes to get the shuttles out. He was shaking now, the memory burning him. But they did not listen. Cade Routh, the executive director for the Lattice Line. He gave the order. He said, and I heard him. The asset takes priority. The asset. Not the 5,000 lives. The lattice. The metal. He closed the gate, and he killed them all. He killed Iris. He looked at his hands. I ran. I was a coward. I ran. And I burned my port. And I hid. I swore I would never touch the lattice again. But he was right about one thing. The asset. This ability. It is an asset. I fell from the lattice. And I swear, I am going to use that same asset to stand right back up and tear them down. Silence descended again. Two people, linked by the same tragedy, the same enemy. You need the truth, Sila said, her voice steady now. And you need your daughter, Asher finished. They are both in the same place, she said. Vault Crest. I have the key, he said, touching the gold band. And I have the ship, she replied. But we do not know where the vault is. And if you touch the lattice again to search for it, Helion will know. I can be subtle, Asher said. Subtle like your test flight, she asked, a flicker of her old, sharp humor returning. Subtlety is relative, Asher said. We need to get me back in a pilot's chair. Another test. An internal systems check. Something that lets me touch the main data stream, just for a moment. I can arrange that, Sila said. A calibration run for the internal station network. But I will be with you. This time, I am not watching from a tower. Their alliance was sealed. Not by a handshake, by a shared, cold fury. The next day, Asher was in the outer ring, moving through the low-G cargo bays. Tamsin had messaged him. She needed a physical component, a black market signal router, to help pinpoint the vault's location. He was supposed to pick it up from a drop point, a rusty locker in loading bay 4. The bay was a canyon of metal, smelling of welding fumes and damp algae. Crates the size of houses drifted on magnetic sleds. He felt the eyes on him before he saw the men. 3 of them. They moved like security, but their clothes were civilian, dock workers. But their hands were steady, and their eyes were professional. They emerged from behind a stack of coolant barrels, fanning out, cutting off his exits. Asher Vale, one said. He was a big man, his face a web of scar tissue. You are a hard man to find. I get that a lot, Asher said, not stopping, just altering his course slightly toward a maintenance conduit. Cade Routh sends his regards, the man said, and that stopped Asher cold. Cade Routh, the executive, the man who killed his sister. He does not know me, Asher said. He knows the Pathfinder who was asking questions. He knows the man who survived Kari 9. He wants you to stop. Permanently. They moved. They were fast. The first one lunged with a kinetic shock baton. Asher sidestepped, letting the man's momentum carry him past, and drove his elbow into the man's kidney. The second man had a plasma cutter. He fired. A bolt of white-hot energy seared the bulkhead where Asher's head had been. Asher grabbed a loose cargo strap and swung, using the low gravity to his advantage, kicking off the wall. He caught the third man in the chest, sending him spinning. The first man was back, the shock baton crackling. Asher ducked under the swing and drove his knuckles into the man's throat. The man with the plasma cutter leveled it again. "Stay still, Ghost." Asher froze. "Mr. Roth just wants the wristband," the man said. "Give it to us, and we will let you walk away." "He can have it," Asher said. "But he has to ask me for it himself." He slammed his hand onto a nearby emergency panel. A bulkhead door, designed to contain fires, slammed down between them, cutting the cargo bay in half. Alarms blared. Asher did not wait. He scrambled into the maintenance conduit and disappeared into the station's metal guts. He was bruised. His arm was burned. But he was alive, and he knew. Routh was scared. He knew Asher was here, and he knew about the wristband. He made his way to the outer ring, to the one safe place he knew. Mrs. Kellen's tea shop. It was packed, the air thick with steam and the salty smell of boiled seaweed. Tamsin was in a corner booth, pretending to read a data slate. Asher slid in opposite her, wincing. "You look terrible," she whispered, not looking up. "What happened?" "Roth's men. They knew my name. They wanted the band." Tamsin's face went pale. "Roth himself, Ash. This is over. You have to run, now." "No," Asher said. "It is just starting, Mrs. Kellen." A woman built like a sturdy barrel, with kind eyes and gray hair in a tight bun, set 2 cups of steaming black tea on their table. "On the house," she said, her voice a low rumble. She looked at Asher's burned arm, then at his eyes. "You look like a man running from something," she said, not unkindly. "Just a disagreement with management, Mrs. Kellen," Asher said. She nodded slowly, polishing the table with a rag. "You know, here on Ravel," she said, her voice dropping so only they could hear. "We have a lot of rules. Helian rules, Helian contracts, Helian security. But you learned something. Living in the shadows of the lattice." She paused, her gaze distant. "Here. Sometimes. Law is just the name people give to their fear." She looked at Asher. "Do not let them make you afraid, son." She walked away. Asher looked at Tamsin. "I am not afraid. I am angry." The calibration run was scheduled for 0300. The station was on skeleton crew. Scylla and Asher were alone in the cockpit of a small, fast courier ship, not a hauler. "You are injured," she noted, looking at the fresh bandage on his arm. "I ran into some old friends," Asher said, strapping in. "Cade Routh?" she asked. Asher nodded. "He wants the band. He is cleaning up loose ends." "Then we must be faster than him," Scylla said. The ship launched, sliding silently from the station. Asher took the controls. "The server node we are calibrating is near the main lattice beacon," Scylla said, her voice all business. You will have exactly 90 seconds of direct access to the primary data stream before the artificial intelligence flags you. Can you plant the tracer in that time? Asher closed his eyes. He did not answer. He connected. This time, it was not a gentle glide. He was a scalpel. He plunged the ship's sensors deep into the quantum foam. He felt the lattice, a massive living thing, a web of light and data. He felt the other ships, the station, the planets, and he felt the dark spots, the encrypted nodes. He felt Routh's presence, a cold, heavy block of security protocols. And behind it, deeper, colder, he felt Vault Crest. It was not in orbit. It was attached to an orphan station, a dead station, powered down, hidden behind a graveyard of decommissioned satellites. He had it. He pushed the tracer, a small, elegant piece of code Tamsin had written, into the data stream. It was designed to look like a simple telemetry error. It flowed toward the orphan station, a digital breadcrumb. Intrusion detected. The ship's console flashed. Unauthorized access. Locking system. They found it, Scylla said, her voice calm. They are tracing us. I am already out, Asher said, pulling his consciousness back. The disconnect, sudden and painful, like yanking a thread from a tapestry. He took manual control, looping the ship back toward Apex Gate. They landed in silence. Asher went to his quarters. He was exhausted, the neural strain heavier this time. 2 hours later, his private comm chimed. It was Scylla. Her face was illuminated by a handheld screen, the background dark. She was not in her quarters. She was hiding. They found it, she said. Her voice was flat. The tracer. They traced it back to the courier ship. They traced it back to my command authority. Scylla, Asher started. I have been suspended, she said. Indefinitely, effective immediately. I have lost all command access. I am locked out of the system. Asher felt a cold stone drop in his stomach. He had failed. He had exposed her. I am sorry. Scylla looked up. Her black Ithari eyes were sharp, bright in the gloom, and she was smiling. It was a terrible, beautiful smile. It was not a smile of defeat. It was a smile of liberation. Do not be sorry, Pathfinder, she said. When you are cornered, it is easier to jump far. They took my keys. Now, we have to break down the door. Tamsin Reed's face was a pixelated ghost on Asher's hidden comms unit. Scylla was with him, standing in the pressurized safety of Tamsin's maintenance workshop, a place shielded from most of the station's internal surveillance. I found it, Tamsin said, her voice stripped of its usual sarcasm. She sounded spooked. The tracer you planted, it worked. It pinged the archive. Vault Crest is not just a server. Ash. It is a place. An orphan station. Lattice Node Epsilon. It is an old switching hub that was supposedly decommissioned after the Kari 9 routes were closed. It is sitting dark in the middle of a debris field. A switching hub, Asher said, the implications hitting him instantly. It is not just a vault. It is a functional, powered-down node in the lattice. Worse, Tamsin said. My sources, the ones who talk in the shadows of the cargo bays, say Epsilon is not dead. It is where Helion runs its off-books traffic. Smugglers, weapons, illegal tech. Cade Routh uses it as his private backdoor. Scylla, who had been silent, stepped into the comms view. He would not hide his crimes in the same place he keeps his hostages, she argued, her voice tight. It is the perfect place, Asher countered, looking at her. He buries the evidence, the Kari 9 logs, and the pod, in a place he controls, a place that officially does not exist. No one would ever look for it there. So how do we get there? Scylla asked. We are grounded. I am flagged. You are a ghost. The second we request a flight plan, Hellion security will have us in chains. We are not requesting a flight plan, Asher said. The decision formed in his mind, sharp and cold. And we are not flying a standard route, Tamsin paled. Ash, no. You cannot be serious. You mean a weave, a blind jump. Not blind, Asher said. I felt it when I planted the tracer. I know its signature. I can get us there. But I need a ship, something fast, with deep access. A Series 4 inspection ship, Scylla said immediately. They are kept in the restricted diagnostic hangars. They have the highest level lattice interfaces for testing the integrity of the network. Can you get us into that hangar? Asher asked her. Scylla's cold smile returned. They suspended my command access. They did not revoke my voice print or my biometrics. They are arrogant. They believe I am defeated. They will not expect me to jump. They will expect me to run. All right, Asher said, turning to Tamsin on the comm. Tam, I need a distraction, something loud, something that pulls security away from Diagnostic Hangar 4. Can you do it? Tamsin let out a long, shaky breath. A diversion, involving an inspection ship and a rogue pathfinder. This is beyond real coffee. Ash, this is buy me my own moon territory. 1 moon, coming up, Asher said. In 30 minutes. Tam. I will give you 5, Tamsin said, and cut the feed. Asher looked at Scylla. The alliance was sealed. This is it. Once we take that ship, there is no coming back. You know that. I am not coming back, Scylla said, her black Ithari eyes like polished stone. I am going forward, to get my daughter. The diagnostic hangar was silent, bathed in sterile blue light. The Series 4 inspection ship sat in its cradle, a sharp, needle-nosed vessel built for speed, not comfort. Voice print required, the hangar's automated voice announced. Scylla Kerr, manager, cockpit recruitment, Scylla said, her voice ringing with an authority she no longer possessed. Voice print confirmed, the system chimed. Manager Kerr, your access is currently suspended. This hangar is restricted. I am aware, Scylla said, moving to the manual override panel. I am here under direct authorization of Cade Routh to conduct an emergency diagnostic on the Epsilon node. Override security lockdown. Confirmation code 909. There was a pause. Asher held his breath. Confirmation code invalid, the system replied. Tamsin, now. Asher whispered into his comm. On the other side of the station, a primary coolant line in the main cargo hub ruptured. Alarms blared across Apex Gate. Emergency. Pressure failure. Cargo bays. 7 through 12. The hangar's internal comm lit up. All security units. Respond to cargo hub pressure failure. All units. The hangar's automated system, its logic conflicting, flashed a warning. Manual override. Concurrent emergency. Hangar 4. Lockdown temporarily lifted. The ramp to the inspection ship hissed open. Let us go, Asher said. They strapped into the 2 seats in the cramped cockpit. The ship hummed to life around them, its systems clean and responsive. Tower. This is Inspector 4, Asher said, using a low, bored maintenance tone. Running emergency diagnostic for the coolant system. Requesting immediate clearance. You are not cleared, Inspector 4, the tower replied. The voice panicked. We have a station-wide emergency. Hold your position. Negative, tower, Asher said. The flux from the coolant failure is threatening to overload the lattice beacon. We are going to stabilize it. He did not wait for a reply. He fired the thrusters, blasting the ship out of the hangar and into the black. He has lost his mind, the tower operator yelled. They are routing security ships to intercept, Scylla reported, her eyes on the proximity sensors. They are too slow, Asher said. He placed his hands on the lattice navigation controls. The console flashed red. Access denied. Pilot identity flagged. Lattice navigation locked. "We are locked out," Scylla said, her voice dropping. "Just from the main roads," Asher said. He looked at the maintenance panel beside the console. It was sealed, but it had a small, thin slot. A manual key slot. "The guest pass," he said. He unhooked his wristband. The gold was heavy in his hand. "That is for a data key," Scylla said. "It is whatever I need it to be," Asher said. He jammed the edge of the gold band, the part engraved with S541, into the slot. The console went dark. For a heart-stopping second, the ship was dead in the void. Then, the console lit up. Not red, but a pale, shimmering gold. "Guest pass authenticated S541. Welcome. All systems unlocked." "Hold on," Asher said. He closed his eyes. He was not in the cockpit. He was in the lattice. He felt the vast, cold emptiness of space, and the shimmering threads of the quantum network holding it all together. He felt the interceptors coming, hot and angry. He felt Apex Gate, a roaring sun of data. And he felt Epsilon, a cold, dark, whispering speck, a void. "Tamsin, are you tracking?" he whispered. "I see you, Ash." Her voice crackled over the comm. "But there is no route. There is no path from where you are to that station. It is a lateral move. It is impossible." "I am not taking a route," Asher said. "I am making one." He reached out with his mind. He was not a pilot. He was a weaver. He found the cold, dark thread of Epsilon Station. He grabbed it, and he pulled. He pulled the thread toward them, forcing a connection that should not exist. The ship screamed. Not a sound, but a physical, bone-jarring vibration. Alarms shrieked. Quantum flux unstable. Hull integrity warning. Route does not exist. Scylla gripped her restraints, her Ithari frame rigid, her eyes fixed on the forward viewport. The starfield outside was gone. It was replaced by a swirling, sickening tunnel of pure, golden light. It was the raw, unfiltered quantum foam. "Asher," she yelled. "Almost. There," he grunted. He felt the strain in his own mind, a pressure building behind his eyes, as if his skull would crack. He was forcing reality to bend, and then, with a final, violent snap, the universe righted itself. The golden light vanished. The vibration stopped. The alarms went silent. Outside the viewport, where before there was only Apex Gate, there was now a junkyard, a massive field of dead satellites and debris, and in the center, dark and silent, was a skeletal, sprawling space station, Lattice Node Epsilon. "We are here," Asher said, his voice ragged. He was drenched in sweat. "My gods," Scylla whispered. Asher scanned the station. "No power, no active defenses. They are hiding." He eased the ship toward a cargo airlock. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy, metallic clang. They unstrapped. "We go in dark," Asher said, pulling a kinetic shock baton from the ship's emergency locker. Scylla found a plasma cutter. The airlock hissed open. The station was freezing. The air was stale, recycled, and thin. The only light came from dim, red emergency strips along the floor, casting long, monstrous shadows. The silence was absolute. "Tamsin, are you with us?" Asher whispered into his comm. "I am patched into their local system," Tamsin's voice replied, tinny and distant. "It is old, barely functional. I am looping the internal sensors. They will not see us coming. I am scanning for... Oh, gods. Ash." "What?" Asher said. "Life signs. Multiple. Very faint. Very cold. Deep in the station. A biological cargo bay." Scylla, who had been scanning the corridor, froze. "Biological cargo," she whispered. "Scylla, stay focused," Asher said, grabbing her arm. She pulled away, her eyes blazing with a cold fire he had not seen before. "Take me there, now." They moved through the skeletal station. It was a ghost ship. They passed empty barracks, abandoned control rooms. Finally, they reached a heavy blast door marked Vault Crest, Biological Quarantine, Helion Core Property. "This is it," Asher said. Scylla put her hand on the panel. "Access denied." Tamsin. "I cannot bypass this one," Tamsin said. "It is isolated. A physical lock." Asher looked at the panel. There was another slot, just like the one on the ship. He pressed his gold band against it. Guest pass authenticated S541. The heavy doors groaned, scraping open. The room beyond was huge, and even colder than the rest of the station. It was not a vault. It was a morgue. No, it was a nursery. Rows upon rows of cryogenic pods, stacked 3 high, stretched into the darkness. Hundreds of them. Each one was small, child-sized. A faint, blue light emanated from each, the biomonitors showing stable, frozen life. Asher felt sick. "It is not just... it is hundreds." "Hostages," Scylla whispered, her voice breaking. "This is how they force cooperation. This is Helion's protection. They take the children of planetary leaders, of Union bosses, of Ithari elders, and they hold them. Biological leverage." She stumbled forward, her eyes scanning the registry plates on the pods. "Ithari, Takari, human." Her voice was a choked sob. Then she saw it, a section marked Ithari. "Carry 9. She ran. She slammed her hands on the ice-caked viewport of a small, isolated pod. The biomonitor was faint, the light flickering, but it was active. Life signs stable. Occupant Arian Kyer. "Arian," she breathed, her fingers tracing the name. "My child. She is here." She fumbled with the release latch, but it was locked. "Tamsin, open this pod," she screamed into her comm. "I cannot." It is on a closed system before Asher could move to help. The far wall of the cryobase shimmered. It was not a wall. It was a holographic projector. The face of Cade Routh, 50 feet high, resolved out of the darkness. He was in an opulent office, a warm drink in his hand. He was smiling. "A touching reunion, Manager Kerr." Routh's voice boomed, condescending and calm. "Or, I suppose, former manager. I must admit, Asher, this is impressive. Truly, a backward weave. You really are a legend." "Routh!" Asher yelled, leveling his shock baton. "Save your energy, Pathfinder," Routh said, sipping his drink. "You are in a cage of my design. This is unfortunate. I was hoping you would simply disappear, but you forced my hand." "What is this?" Scylla demanded, her voice a raw shriek. "What have you done?" "This," Routh said, gesturing to the pods, "is pragmatism, interstellar stability. These assets ensure cooperation. They keep the peace, a small price to pay for a galaxy without war. I am offering you a choice. Silence. You walk away. I will even grant you amnesty. You and Scylla. Forget what you saw here. This is bigger than one child." "You call this peace?" Asher spat. "You are using children as hostages. You murdered my sister for this peace." "Your sister was an acceptable loss," Routh said, his smile fading. "The needs of the many. Now, your choice. Silence or death. You have 10 seconds. Scylla was shaking, her eyes locked on her daughter's frozen face. Asher stepped in front of her. "I hold a ticket that goes straight to hell, Routh," Asher said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you want to come with me?" Routh sighed. "So be it. A waste." His image vanished. The room was plunged back into red emergency light. Intruder alert. Intruder alert. Lethal force engaged. Blast doors at either end of the bay slammed open. Hellion security troops, clad in black, full body armor, poured in, their weapons raised. "Tamsin, now!" Asher yelled, grabbing Sayela and pulling her behind a stack of coolant barrels. "On it!" Tamsin's voice crackled. "Kiss the floor!" A heavy clunk echoed through the station. The hum of the artificial gravity generators died. They were in zero gravity. The scene exploded into chaos. The heavily armored Helion troops, trained for standard gravity, were clumsy. They drifted, their magnetic boots struggling to find purchase. Asher, a spacer born to the void, was in his element. "Go!" he yelled at Sayela. He kicked off the bulkhead, launching himself over the troops' heads. He smashed his shock baton into the helmet of one, sending the man spinning. Sayela, with her etheric grace, was even more fluid. She moved like a phantom, using the plasma cutter to slice through their weapons, disabling them. A whirlwind of focused rage. But there were too many. A dozen. 24. They were forming a perimeter, their rifles finding a target. "Sayela, the pod. Get to the pod, I need the station core," Asher yelled. He saw it across the bay. The main control terminal for the cryo system. It was locked. Hellion core security. A rifle blast seared the air next to his head. "Tamsin, I cannot hack it. They are locked down." "It is not a software lock, Ash. It is a neural interface. It is waiting for a command." Asher propelled himself across the bay, dodging plasma fire. He slammed into the console. Neural interface required, waiting for Pathfinder synchronization. Routh had designed it so only he, or someone like him, could control it. Asher had no port. His was a ruin of scar tissue. He looked at his wrist. The gold band, S541. It is not just a key, he thought. It is a bridge. He ripped off his glove and pressed his bare wrist. The gold band, flat against the cold, dark interface. "Come on," he whispered. "Nothing." He closed his eyes, ignoring the plasma bolt sizzling past him. He focused. He reached out, not with his hand, but with his mind. He felt his own heart. Thump, 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 thump. He felt the station's dormant power core, a slow, cold rhythm. He forced his heartbeat to slow. He forced it to match the station. Heart, brain, sync. He gasped. A blinding, golden pain shot up his arm. The lattice. It was not just around him. It was in him. The gold band, S541, began to glow. Not with light, but with a deep, inner heat. The veins in his arm, all the way to his shoulder, lit up from within, a river delta of golden energy. He was the station. He was the network. "Tamsin," he gasped, his voice a strained echo that came from the station's own speakers. "Lock the external airlocks. Vent the boarding tube." "Ash," she cried. "Do it, outside." The Helion boarding ship was torn from its moorings as the tube depressurized, venting it into the debris field. The remaining troops in the bay looked around in panic, their link to their ship severed. "System, activate environmental overrides," Asher commanded, his voice godlike. "Increase oxygen in this room. Activate fire suppression." Thick, white foam erupted from the ceilings, filling the bay, obscuring the troops, disorienting them. The fight was over. Asher slumped against the console, his arm numb, the golden light fading. He was breathing heavily, his heart pounding. Through the dissipating foam, he saw Sayela. She was at the pod. She had used the plasma cutter to slice the lock. The pod hissed open. A cloud of cryogenic mist spilled onto the floor. Sayela reached in, her hands shaking so violently she could barely unhook the restraints. She lifted out the small, still form of her daughter. The child was pale, cold to the touch, but breathing. A wisp of fog left her lips. Sayela fell to her knees, clutching the child to her chest. She buried her face in Arian's hair. her body racked with silent sobs. Her hot tears fell onto the child's frozen cheek and turned to ice. Asher watched, his own grief for Iris a hollow ache. This was the first step. He pushed himself off the console and walked toward her, his steps heavy. He knelt beside her and placed his hand on her shoulder. A promise. He would protect this. He would protect them both. The floating foam dissipated, revealing the chaos of the cryo bay. The Hylian troops, disoriented and struggling in zero gravity, were effectively neutralized, their magnetic boots useless. Scylla was on her knees, her body wrapped around the small, cold form of her daughter, Arian. The child was breathing, shallow, but alive. Asher Vale stood over the station's core console, his arm throbbing from the neural link. The golden glow under his skin had faded, but the connection remained. He was the station. He could feel its power, its sensors, its broadcast antenna, and he could feel the cold, dark data in its core, vault crest. Tamsin, he said, his voice now broadcasting through the station's comms. Are you seeing this I am in? I am inside the vault. I see it, Ash. Her voice crackled, filled with awe. I have access. They did not just store the pod data. They stored everything. The original Kari 9 telemetry, the audio logs, the command overrides. Asher looked at Sayla, who was rocking her daughter, whispering her name. He looked at the rows, upon rows of frozen children, hostages against a galaxy. The cold fury he had carried for 2 years, the grief for Iris. It crystallized into a single, sharp point of action. His revenge would not be a bullet. It would be the truth. Tamsin, he said, his voice cold and clear. Patch the station's main broadcast antenna through the lattice beacon. I want maximum bandwidth. I want you to aim it at Apex Gate, at Ravel, at every civilian port in this sector. Ash, what are you doing? She asked, her voice tight with panic. That is not a tracer. That is a lighthouse. They will know exactly where we are. Cade Routh will send everything he has. He already did, Asher said, gesturing to the neutralized troops. He is scared. It is time to show him what terror really looks like. Do it, Tam. Patching, she said, her voice grim. You are live to the sector, Ash. What are you going to send? Asher closed his eyes, interfacing with the vault. He grabbed the files. First, the video log. He sent the high-resolution feed from the cryo bay. The rows of pods, the children's faces, the names. This is Asher Vale, he broadcast, his voice echoing from every speaker on Apex Gate, every comms unit on Ravel. I am at a Hylian black site, Lattice Node Epsilon. For years, the Hylian Collective has spoken of protection. This is what their protection looks like. This is their leverage. This is their peace. They are holding hundreds of children hostage to maintain their monopoly. He then pulled the second file, the Kari 9 audio log. 2 years ago, Asher's voice continued. 5,000 miners died at Kari 9. Hylian called it a tragic accident, an instability. This is the truth. He broadcast the audio. Cade Routh's voice, cold and clinical, filled the airwaves. The asset takes priority. The flux is minimal. But I will not risk the lattice. Seal the gate. Then, Iris's voice, frantic, desperate, from deep within the mine. We have shuttles. We just need 10 minutes. Please, we have 5,000 people here. Do not close the gate. And Routh's final, chilling order, seal it. The silence that followed the broadcast was heavier than any gravity. Asher opened his eyes. He cut the feed. In the control tower on Apex Gate, the station director stared, his face ashen. On Ravel, in the bars and the corporate offices, the port workers and the executives were frozen, staring at their screens. Mrs. Kellen stood in her tea shop, her hands clasped, tears streaming down her face. The backlash was immediate. The Helian Collective's network lit up with fury, denial, and panic. Within minutes, Asher's face appeared on every official Helian channel. But now he was not a ghost. He was a monster. Cyber-terrorist Asher Vale, a disgraced former pilot, mentally unstable, has seized a Helian archive. The data is fabricated. The images are doctored. He is a threat to interstellar stability. "Wow," Tamsin whispered over the private comm. "They are fast. They just put a bounty on your head. Ash, 10 million credits. Dead or alive." "They are desperate," Asher said. He turned to Sayla, who was now wrapping Arian in a thermal blanket from an emergency locker. "We have to go," he said. "They will be sending a real fleet, not just a boarding party." As he spoke, a private channel pinged on the console. Encrypted. Cade Routh. Asher accepted it. Routh's face appeared again, but the smile was gone. His eyes were cold furnaces of rage. "You think you have won. You little ghost," Routh hissed. "You have just signed your own death warrant. And hers. And the child's." "It is a little late for threats, Cade," Asher said. "It is never too late for a deal," Routh said, his voice smoothing, becoming poisonously reasonable. "Sell me the gold code. Give me back control of this station. I will let you go. I will give you a new identity. Peace. A new life. Far from here. All you have to do is name your price." Asher looked at the man who had murdered his sister. He looked at the man who had stolen Sayela's child. "The peace you are talking about, Cade," Asher said, "is the silence of a grudge, and I am not selling." He cut the connection. Proximity alert. Tamsin yelled, "Ash, he is not sending a fleet. He is sending his personal guard. 3 Blackfin cutters. They are fast. They are coming in hot. They will be on you in 5 minutes." "We will not be here in 5 minutes," Asher said. He scooped up a discarded Helian rifle. "Sayla, get to the ship. Strap Arian in. Warm the engines. Do not wait for me." "What?" she said, clutching her daughter, who was beginning to stir, her small, ethery eyes fluttering. "Asher, I am not leaving you." "That was not a request," he said, his voice hard. "Your fight is over. You have her. My fight is just beginning. Go. Now." She looked at him, her eyes searching his. She saw the iron certainty. She saw the ghost who had finally decided to become a man. She nodded, her face a mask of terrible resolve. "Do not be a fool, Asher Vale." "I am always a fool," he said. "It is my best quality." She ran, her daughter secure in her arms, moving with silent ethery grace through the zero gravity, back toward their stolen inspection ship. Asher turned back to the console. He still felt the hum, the connection. "Tamsin, stay with me. Sayla is not a pilot. Not like this. Routh's ships are coming." "I see them. Ash. They are... Oh, hell. They are powering up to fire. They are going to destroy the station, with you in it." "They can try," Asher said. He closed his eyes. He sank back into the lattice. He saw the 3 Blackfin cutters. They were sleek, deadly, and flown by artificial intelligence. They were maneuvering into a firing solution. "Change the battlefield," Sila's voice said. It was not on the comm. It was in his head, a memory of what she had said. "When you are cornered, it is easier to jump far." "Sayla," he said into the comm, his voice a strained whisper as he focused. "That code, S541. It is not just a key. It is an authorization. A deep, old authorization." "What are you doing?" Ash, Tamsin's voice was sharp. The broadcast. It was just the opening shot, Asher said. He could feel the lattice. He could feel its core structure. The code on his wrist, the authorization. It gave him access to the main protocols, the ones that governed the network. Scylla suggested it, he breathed. Change the battlefield. I am going to. He found the regional control matrix for the entire Revel sector. It was controlled by Helion, by Cade Routh, but buried deep in the code, a protocol that had not been touched in 50 years, was an emergency override, a civilian command protocol. It was designed to transfer control of the lattice from a corporate entity to a self-governing port federation in the event of a catastrophic failure. Like now. Asher, no, Tamsin said, realizing what he was doing. If you do that, you are not just a ghost. You are not just a terrorist. You are declaring war. You will be exposed. Every Pathfinder protocol. They will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. Let them hunt me, Asher said. He thought of Iris. He thought of Arian. I am tired of running. He grabbed the override. He linked it to his own authority. S541. The gold code. And he pushed. Emergency protocol. Civilian override. Lattice control transfer initiated. Across the sector, every Helion control tower lit up with red alarms. On Apex Gate, the station director watched in horror as his console went dark. Replaced by the seal of the Ravelport Federation, Cade Routh, on his flagship, screamed in rage as his navigation controls went dead. What has he done? What has he done? The lattice, the roads of the void, no longer belonged to Helion. They belonged to the people. Ash, Tamsin shrieked. The cutters, they are firing. Asher opened his eyes. Through the station's sensors, he saw the 3 beams of concentrated plasma lancing toward him. He did not have time to move the station. He did not have time to escape. He saw the inspection ship, Scylla's ship, clearing the debris field. The cutters were between him and her. Tamsin, he yelled. Get back to your workshop. Get a lock on Scylla's ship. Now. What, why? Just do it, Asher ran from the control room, propelling himself through the zero gravity, back toward the airlock, back toward the stolen ship. The station shuddered as the first plasma blast hit, vaporizing an external antenna array. He launched himself into the cockpit. Scylla was in the pilot's seat, her hands white on the controls. Arian strapped into the co-pilot's chair, wrapped in blankets, her eyes wide. I told you to go, he yelled. And I told you not to be a fool, she yelled back. They are blocking us, we cannot weave. The 3 cutters were turning, their engines flaring, coming back for another pass. Tamsin, Asher yelled, pulling himself into the co-pilot's seat, displacing Arian gently. Are you there? I am here, Tamsin's voice was frantic. But Ash, they have another wave coming. Routh's personal command ship. It is a dreadnought. You cannot fight that. We are not fighting, Asher said. He looked at Scylla. Move over. Let me fly. They switched seats in a chaotic, zero-G ballet. Asher strapped in, his hands finding the lattice controls. The override, he said. It is not just for the ports. It is for the ships. They are flying on my network now. He closed his eyes. He connected. The 3 cutters were closing fast. The dreadnought was a shadow in the distance, but it was coming. Hold on, he said. He did not weave forward. He did not jump. He pulled. The quantum foam twisted. The inspection ship, instead of lurching forward, snapped backward, as if pulled by an invisible string. It was a move that did not exist. A 3-step reverse. A legend. A maneuver only a human mind, unbound by the logic of an artificial intelligence, could even conceive of. An AI would try to find a new route. Asher made one, out of a direction that was not a direction. The ship snapped backward, then sideways, then forward, in 3 moves so fast they were one. They reappeared behind the 3 Blackfin cutters. The cutters. Their artificial intelligence pilots, completely baffled by a move that defied physics, tried to compensate. Their targeting locks were broken. "Now," Asher whispered. He did not fire. He wove. He reached out and grabbed the lattice threads that the 3 cutters were flying on, and he tangled them. The 3 ships, flying at full combat speed, were suddenly on a collision course. Their AI pilots fought for control, but they were flying on a road that had just been tied in a knot. They collided. A massive, silent explosion of white light and shrapnel metal filled the void. Asher opened his eyes. He was breathing hard. Scylla was staring at him, her face pale, her black eyes wide with a mixture of terror and something else. "That was," she whispered. "The 3-step reverse," Asher said, his voice quiet. "A party trick." "Ash," Tamsin's voice was a sob. That was beautiful. But the dreadnought is still coming. It is not on the civilian lattice. It is running on a private, military-grade network. You cannot touch it." Asher looked at the dreadnought. It was huge. A city of guns. It was Cade Routh's flagship. It was coming to finish the job. "We cannot fight it," he said. "We cannot run." "So what do we do?" Scylla asked, her hand moving to her daughter, who was watching Asher with quiet, curious eyes. "We hide," Asher said. He turned the ship, not toward deep space, but back toward Apex Gate. "What?" Scylla said. "He expects us to run. He expects us to jump. He does not expect us to hide in his own house." He wove the ship, a simple, short jump, back into the main shipping lane, right in the middle of a convoy of heavy freight haulers. On the dreadnought's bridge, Routh slammed his fist on the console. "Where did he go? Find him. Find that ship." "Sir," the tactical officer said, "he is gone. He vanished from sensors." "He cannot be gone," Routh roared. Asher's voice, calm and clear, suddenly broadcast over the dreadnought's main speakers. He was on the open civilian channel. "This is Asher Vale, to the people of Revell and the newly formed Port Federation. Your lattice is now free, but Cade Routh is still trying to take it back. He is currently in the restricted sector, in an unregistered military dreadnought, in direct violation of the very contracts he wrote." On Apex Gate, the new civilian controllers saw the dreadnought on their scopes. "Signal that ship," the new port director ordered. "Identify yourself or you will be fired upon." Routh's face went purple. He dared." "Cade," Asher's voice said, laced with cold amusement. "You wanted a war. You got one. But it is not my war anymore. It is yours. Against everyone." The comms channels exploded, port after port, hearing Asher's signal, seeing the public data, began to activate their own civilian override protocols. The Helion network, the backbone of their empire, was fracturing. The monopoly was broken, one by one. The lights of Cade Routh's empire were going out. Asher Vale, ghost and cyber-terrorist, had just given the sky back to the people. He cut the channel, slumping in his seat, the adrenaline fading, leaving him utterly exhausted. He looked at Scylla. She was looking at him, and for the first time, she was not the manager, not the grieving mother. She was just Scylla. "You are," she said, her voice soft, "the most terrifying man I have ever met." "Good," Asher said, managing a weak smile. "I am going to take a nap. Wake me up when we get to Mrs. Kellen's." Tamsin Reed's independent workshop was buried in the unlisted maintenance corridors of the outer ring. It smelled of plasma-scorched metal, high-grade solvents, and real, illicit coffee. Asher guided the stolen inspection ship into the cramped, pressurized bay, the magnetic clamps catching the vessel with a heavy, final thud. He cut the engines. The silence that rushed in was deafening. A physical weight. The frantic thrum of the lattice. The shriek of alarms. The hiss of plasma, all gone. All that remained was the quiet hum of Tamsin's jury-rigged power grid and the shallow, rasping breaths of the child in Sayla's arms. Tamsin was waiting by the airlock, her face pale beneath a smear of grease, her copper hair sticking up in sweaty clumps. "Gods! Ash!" she breathed as the ramp lowered. "You did not just kick the hornet's nest. You stole their queen and burned the hive." Asher stumbled down the ramp, his legs weak, the adrenaline draining from his body like a ruptured fuel line. His left arm, where the gold band had pulsed with the lattice's power, was numb and cold. Sayla followed, her movements still precise, still controlled, but her focus was entirely on the small, shivering form in her arms. Arian was awake, her large etheri eyes wide and dark, taking in the strange, metal world around her. "She is cold," Sayla said, her voice hoarse, bypassing all pleasantries. "The cryofluid. Her core temperature is too low." "Back room," Tamsin said, already moving. "I have a medical scanner, an old one, but it works. And a thermal heater." She led them through the cluttered workshop, past dissected engine cores and stacks of illegal signal boosters, to a small, shielded habitation module. It was clean. Tamsin pushed Sayla gently toward the medical cot. Sayla laid Arian down, her hands, which had been so steady with a plasma cutter, now shaking as she tried to wrap the child in thermal blankets. Asher watched from the doorway, feeling useless. He was a weapon, not a comfort. He had torn the sky apart, but he did not know how to warm a child. Tamsin worked the scanner. "She is stable, hypothermic, but stable. Her vital signs are strong. She is Athari. She is resilient." Arian's eyes found Asher in the doorway. She was not afraid. She just watched him. Sayla chafed her daughter's small, pale hands, her own face a mask of desperate concentration. "Arian," she whispered. "It is me. It is Mother." The child's lips parted. A small, foggy breath escaped. "Mother," she whispered. The word a tiny, fragile sound. That was the sound that broke the Ice Queen. Sayla Kir made a noise Asher had never heard before. It was not a word. It was a fracture. It was the sound of a universe of grief, years of repressed anguish, and a sudden, violent hope colliding. She collapsed over the cot, her body shaking, pressing her face into the blankets beside her daughter. Sobs tore through her, deep, silent, agonizing. The composure she had maintained as a manager, as a soldier, as a captive, dissolved completely, leaving only the mother. Asher took an involuntary step back, feeling like an intruder. Tamsin busied herself at the console, her back to the room, giving Sayla the privacy of her grief. After a long minute, Sayla's sobs quieted. She pushed her hair back from her face. She took a long, shuddering breath. She stood. Asher expected her to say something, to issue a command, to ask for a report. Instead, she turned to him. She crossed the small room in 2 strides. She did not speak. She simply stepped into his space and wrapped her arms around his chest, burying her face against his shoulder. He stiffened, his body rigid with surprise. She was taller than him, but she felt impossibly light, as if she were made of hollow bird bones. Her shoulders were shaking. It was not a romantic embrace. It was the desperate, clinging hug of a survivor, a silent acknowledgement of a debt that could never be repaid, a shared trauma that would forever bind them. Slowly, awkwardly, Asher raised his arms and held her. He felt the tension drain from her. He was no longer the pathfinder, the terrorist, the legend. He was just the anchor. "Thank you," she whispered against his flight suit, the words muffled. You brought her home." "We brought her home," he said, his own voice thick. Behind them, Tamsin cleared her throat, her eyes still fixed on her console. "Right," she said, her voice overly bright. "Well, I am going to make some of that real coffee, and maybe install a new blast door. You two, stay put. The whole sector is on fire." The next 24 hours were a blur of adrenaline and exhaustion. Tamsin's workshop was their sanctuary, their bunker. Aryan, warmed and fed, recovered with Athari speed. She was quiet, watchful, and refused to be more than 3 feet from her mother, her small hand constantly clutching Sila's. They watched the chaos unfold on Tamsin's data feeds. The Helian Collective was hemorrhaging. Their official narrative that Asher Vale was a deranged cyber-terrorist was crumbling. The audio log of Cade Routh condemning 5,000 people to death was undeniable. The video feed of the Cryobay, cross-referenced by Athari and Takari governments, who recognized their missing children, was a public relations apocalypse. Helian stock had evaporated. Their contracts were being nullified. Cade Routh had been recalled, summoned to an emergency tribunal. But Helian was not dead. It was a multi-system hydra. Routh still had his money, his lawyers, and his private army. The dreadnought had retreated, but it had not been captured. The war was not over. It had just changed. And Asher Vale was the new face of it. His bounty picture was everywhere, but the civilian channels had co-opted it. They were not calling him a terrorist. They were calling him the Weaver. They were calling him the Ghost of Kari 9. Artists on Ravel were already stenciling his face on bulkheads, the gold S541 band on his wrist rendered as a halo. Asher watched it, his stomach twisting. "I hate this," he said, turning away from the screen. "I wanted justice. I did not want to be a symbol." "You did not have a choice," Sila said. She was sitting on the floor with Aryan, teaching her a quiet Etheri string game. She looked up, her black eyes clear. "You showed them the truth. They needed a face to attach it to. It is yours." "They will hunt me forever," he said. "Yes," she agreed, without pity. "They will." A message pinged on Tamsin's most secure line. Tamsin read it, her eyebrows rising into her hairline. Well, she said, looking at Sayla. "It seems you are officially unemployed. Helian just broadcast your termination. Discharged for gross insubordination and consorting with known terrorists. Congratulations." "I am devastated," Sayla said, her voice dry. "Do not be," Tamsin said, grinning. "That was the bad news. The good news is, you just got a new job offer from the Ravel Port Federation. They and 5 other independent ports have formed a provisional committee to manage the civilian lattice. They want you to chair it." Sayla stared, the string in her hands forgotten. "What that is? Impossible. I was part of the Helian command." "You are the Athari who got her child back," Tamsin said. "You are the manager who stood up to Routh. And, most importantly," she tapped the console, "you are the only one in the sector, apart from our resident ghost, who actually knows how the damn thing is supposed to be run. They need you." Sayla looked at Aryan, then at Asher. The Ice Queen, the corporate tool, was gone. The woman who emerged was something new, tempered by loss and hardened by resolve. "Tell them," Sayla said, her voice firm. "I accept, later." Asher found Tamsin in the main workshop. She was humming, welding a new power conduit to the wall. "You are in a good mood," he said, picking up a wrench. "I am an independent contractor now," she said, flipping up her goggles. "Quit the station this morning. Read Independent Weaving and Diagnostics. I am my own boss. And my first client is the new Port Federation. Turns out, when you are the only one who knows how to keep the lights on after a revolution, people pay you. A lot, Asher smiled. I am happy for you, Tam. You should be, she said, poking him in the chest. Speaking of paying, that 10 million credit bounty. Asher raised an eyebrow. What about it? I am just saying, she said, trying to look serious. 10 million. Helion credits are in the tank, but that is still a lot. I could turn you in. I have you right here. You are sleeping in my back room. You would miss me, Asher said. I would, she admitted, the grin breaking through. And besides, who would I complain to? You are the only one who appreciates my genius. She turned serious. You did good, Ash, for Iris. You did it. The humor faded, replaced by the old, familiar ache. For Iris, he echoed. The workshop felt too small, the hum of the recycler too loud. He needed space. He found himself back in the cockpit of the stolen inspection ship. It was the only place that felt like home. Dark, quiet, smelling of ozone and metal. He sat in the pilot's chair, turning the gold band on his wrist. He had done it. He had exposed Routh. He had justice for his sister. So why did he feel so empty? The cabin door hissed open. Silas stood there, backlit by the workshop lights. Arian was asleep in the back room. She is dreaming, Silas said quietly, sliding into the co-pilot's chair. She told me she dreamed of a golden man pulling her out of the ice. Asher looked at his hands. I am not a golden man. I am the man who was too late. I was charting empty space while my sister was dying. The guilt was a physical thing, a cold weight in his chest. I heard her voice on that log, Sila, pleading, and Routh just cut her off. I should have been there. I should have saved her. Sila was silent for a long time, watching the dark console. When I lost Arian, she said, her voice soft. I believed she was dead, but I lost someone else that day, too. My eldest brother. He was a miner. He worked with your sister. Asher looked at her, stunned. He was at Kari 9. He was human, she said, a small, sad smile touching her lips. My family adopted him. He was loud and funny, and he taught me how to cheat at cards. He was on one of those shuttles. He did not get out. She turned her black, unreadable eyes to him. Grief is not a wound that heals. Asher, it is a lock. It snaps shut. It does not go away. You do not move on. You just learn to carry it. She reached out, her slender, pale fingers gently touching the gold band on his wrist. You were not too late for my daughter. You were not too late for all those other children. You were not too late for Iris. What do you mean? Your revenge. It was not just burning Cade Routh. It was this. She gestured to the quiet station around them. A free port, a civilian lattice, a system where asset does not come before people. You did not just avenge her, Asher. You built her monument. He stared at her, the emptiness in his chest aching, but shifting. A monument. He had not thought of it that way. The silence in the cockpit was no longer empty. It was full. He looked at her, at this impossible Ithari woman who had lost everything, regained her child, and was now preparing to rebuild the world. He saw the grief in her eyes, but it was not a void. It was a fire. He leaned in. She met him halfway. The kiss was not passionate. It was not the desperate kiss of a high-stakes adventure. It was quiet. It was slow. It tasted of salt and recycled air, and the faint, metallic tang of shared loss. It was a promise. He pulled back. This is complicated. Everything worth doing is, she whispered. He managed a real smile, the first one in years that did not feel cracked. When the sky is quiet, he said, when this is all over, I am taking you to get seaweed tea. Mrs. Kellens. A faint smile touched her own lips. I hate seaweed tea. You will learn to love it, he said. It is an acquired taste. She leaned her head back against the seat, a quiet laugh escaping her. What now, Pathfinder? You are the most wanted man in the Helion Collective. You are a folk hero. You cannot just go back to hauling scrap. No, he said, looking at the controls. I cannot. I hate being a symbol. I am not a leader. He touched the lattice interface, the cold plastic that had, for a moment, felt like a part of him. But I am a weaver. He looked at her. You are building the new system, but someone has to fly it. Someone has to teach the new pilots how to touch the lattice without Helion's artificial intelligence holding their hands. Someone has to teach them how to do it safely. Someone like you, she said. It was not a question. Someone like me, he confirmed. I am not running anymore. I am staying. Helion taught pilots to put the cargo first. I am going to teach them how to put the people first. The weeks that followed were a cold, grinding war of attrition, fought not with plasma, but with data streams, legal injunctions, and public opinion. Tamsin Reed's workshop, once a hidden sanctuary, became the unofficial command center for the Ravelport Federation's new Lattice Committee. Sila Kerr, now the provisional chair, worked with a focused, terrifying efficiency. She was waging her own war, dismantling the Helion legal framework that had bound the sector for decades. Asher became her shadow, part technical advisor, part bodyguard, and part co-parent. Arian, blossoming in the presence of her mother, had adopted the workshop as her personal kingdom, her quiet, watchful eyes, missing nothing. Cade Routh had not been idle. Helion, though wounded, was a vast, ancient beast. Routh's lawyers were spinning a narrative of corporate sabotage. They painted Asher as a jilted ex-employee, a disgruntled, violent operative who had manipulated Sila, a grieving, unstable mother, to steal corporate assets. They were lobbying hard to have the civilian override declared illegal. They are trying to paint us as a conspiracy, Sila said, her voice flat. She was looking at a legal document on Tamsin's console. They are claiming our meeting was not chance, that we planned this. Let them, Asher said. He was sitting on the floor, showing Arian how to braid sensor wire. It does not matter. The truth is out. It does matter, Tamsin interrupted. She was hunched over her own terminal, her augmented reality goggles flashing with data. They are demanding a full audit of the S541 code. They are claiming you, she pointed at Asher. Faked the code on the pod to lure Sila in. They are saying the band is a fabrication. That is absurd, Sila said. The Ithari archives confirmed the code. The Helion lawyers are saying the Ithari archives were hacked. By me, Tamsin said, looking grim. They are trying to discredit every piece of our evidence. The only way to stop it is to do a full, public decryption of the gold code itself. Not just the surface registry, all of it. Then do it, Asher said. I have nothing to hide. It is not that simple, Ash, Tamsin said. The code. It is old, really old. The protocols are layered. I am not. I am not just decrypting a key. I am excavating. For 2 days, she worked. She locked herself in her server room, drinking cup after cup of real coffee, her fingers a blur. Asher and Sila were left in the main workshop, in a strange, suspended state of domesticity, waiting for the other boot to drop. On the 3rd day, Tamsin emerged. Her face was ashen. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Tam, Asher asked, standing. The band, she said, her voice a reedy whisper. The code. S541. What about it? It is not just a pod registry, she said, her eyes wide. That is the top layer, the newest layer. There is another layer beneath it. A signature. A weaver's mark. It is a digital signature, burned into the code's quantum matrix. A signature for what? Scylla asked, stepping forward. The original quantum lattice, Tamsin said, her voice full of awe. The very first generation, before Helion, before the corporate charters. It is the signature of one of the original designers, one of the first weavers. Asher felt a strange chill. So it is old. No, Tamsin said, looking at him. You do not understand. The weavers. They were pathfinders. Ash. The first ones. And they left these marks on their best work. S541. It is not just a pod. It is a promise. It is a piece of foundational technology, marked by its creator. Who? Asher asked. Whose mark is it? Tamsin just stared at him. Veil. The signature is Veil. Asher stepped back, a disorienting vertigo washing over him. My father. That is impossible. He was a hauler. Not your father, Tamsin said, shaking her head. Or maybe your grandfather, or great-grandmother. I do not know. But the name is there. Veil. This band has been in your family since the beginning of the lattice. Scylla, who had been listening intently, went utterly still. Her face was pale, her black eyes fixed on the gold band on Asher's wrist. Scylla, Asher asked. When I first saw the band, Scylla said, her voice distant. In my office, I froze. I told you it was because it matched the pod registry. That was true, but it was not the only reason. There was something else. A memory. What memory? My mother, Scylla said. She was an Athari elder, a diplomat from the generation that first made contact with humans. When I was small, she told me stories of the first accord, the human weavers who came, offering to share the sky. She said they sealed the accord not with a treaty, but with a promise, a gold code promise, a survival pact. Humans and Athari would protect each other's children. Always. She looked at Tamsin. In the deep archives, the Athari logs. Are there biometric markers? Tamsin's fingers flew. Yes, paired with the weaver's mark, an Athari biometric signature. From 90 years ago. Read it, Scylla commanded. Tamsin read the name. It was Scylla's mother. A heavy silence filled the room. Asher looked at the band. This simple piece of gold he had worn his entire life, and suddenly understood it was the heaviest thing in the galaxy. It was a pact, Scylla whispered, her eyes meeting his. Between your family and mine. Between our species. S541. It is not just a code. It is a promise. It is the promise that bound us, long before we ever met. But, Asher said, his mind reeling, that is not all. Tamsin looked at him, confused. What do you mean? There is another layer, is not there. Tam, Asher said, his voice quiet. You found something else. Tamsin nodded, her expression pained. Ash. There was a mission log, a deep, encrypted, self-deleting mission log, from 2 years ago, right after the Kari 9 disaster. What mission? It was you, Ash, she said, her voice breaking. You were still a Pathfinder. You had not burned your port yet. You took an unsanctioned run into the quarantine zone. You found the pod. You were the retrieval agent. You pulled Arian's pod from the debris field. Asher shook his head. No, I do not remember that. I would remember. You would not, Tamsin said, because the last entry in the log is you. Sitting in the cockpit of your Pathfinder ship, you are staring at the pod, and you are crying. You are saying I was too late for Iris, but not for this one. Not for this one. And then, you activated a full neural wipe, a memory scrub, just for that mission. You did not want to just quit Helion. You wanted to erase the fact that you had ever done anything good for them. Even by accident. You erased it. Ash, you rescued her. And then you made yourself forget. Asher looked at Scylla. She was staring at him, her face a mask of disbelief, and love, and a profound, shattering understanding. The man she had met in that office, the desperate, lying hauler, was the same man who had saved her daughter 2 years before. He was the man her family had made a promise with 90 years ago. Their meeting was not an accident. It was a circle, closing. A touching play, a new voice said. They spun. Cade Routh was on the main console, his face broadcast on every screen. He was not in an office. He was on the bridge of his dreadnought, a cold, sneering smile on his face. Tamsin had been so deep in the archives. She had missed his intrusion. A truly moving story, Routh mocked. A 90-year-old promise. A secret rescue. A memory wipe. You two, you are better than you know. A brilliant piece of theater to sway public opinion. It is not theater, Cade, Asher said, stepping in front of Scylla. Oh, I am sure it feels very real to you, Routh said. But to the Intersector Court, it looks like a conspiracy. I am formally charging you both, you, Vale, for the theft of the Epsilon Station, and you, Scylla Kerr, for conspiring to defraud the Helion Collective by fabricating a multi-generational emotional claim. It is beautiful. But it is over. Asher was about to reply, to threaten him, but Scylla put a hand on his arm. She stepped past him, her face calm, composed. She looked at the image of Cade Routh, not with fear, but with a cold, clear pity. It is not a claim, Director Routh, she said, her voice clear and strong. And it is not a conspiracy. It is a debt. She held up a small data chip. You are correct. The story is moving, which is why I am publishing it. Not just our story, but the original Gold Code Pact, the full document, the signatures, my mother's, and the name Vale. She smiled, her cold, sharp smile. You wanted to paint this as a personal grudge. You are right, it is. But it is not my grudge. It is the grudge of every family, Etheri and human, that your corporation has broken. You did not just lose the lattice, Cade. You lost the story. She slotted the chip. She hit broadcast. Routh's face contorted in rage. You... He was cut off. Tamsin, her face grim, had slammed a plasma torch through the console's broadcast hardware, severing the connection. He is... annoying, Tamsin said. The Intersector Court's decision came 2 days later, spurred by the overwhelming public outcry and the discovery of the original Gold Code Pacts. The court declared Helion's monopoly null and void. The lattice was to be permanently and irrevocably transferred to a federation of self-governing ports. Cade Routh, facing charges from a dozen different sectors, vanished, his dreadnought jumping to an unknown, uncharted system, a rogue king without a kingdom. Asher Vale stood before the new committee. He had given his testimony. He had confirmed the technical aspects of the transfer. The committee, Scylla said, her voice formal in the chamber. Thanks you, and we would like to formally offer you the position of Chief Training Coordinator for the new Federation fleet. Asher looked at the faces, the human and Ethari delegates. He looked at Tamsin, who was grinning from the engineering pit. He looked at Scylla, the chairwoman, her face impassive, professional. He shook his head. I am grateful, but I decline. A murmur went through the room. I am a pilot, Asher said, his voice quiet but carrying. Not a coordinator. I am a weaver, not a symbol. I will serve this Federation, but I will do it from a cockpit, not from a desk. My revenge against Cade Routh is not to take his chair. It is to do the job he failed at. It is to put the people first. He voluntarily, publicly, recused himself from any position of authority. He did not want power. He just wanted to fly. The final scene was not in a courtroom or a workshop. It was on a launch pad, a new ship, a trainer, sleek and fast, painted in the new Federation colors of blue and gold. Asher was in the pilot's seat, running pre-flight checks. The cockpit was clean, new. Tamsin was in the engineer's station, already complaining. This wiring is sloppy. The insulators are cheap. I am going to have to rebuild this entire thing. The cabin door hissed open. Scylla entered, not in her severe managerial suit, but in a simple, practical flight suit. She was holding Arian's hand. Arian was clutching a piece of flimsy plast. A drawing. It showed two figures. One was tall and slender, with black Ithari eyes. The other was human, with a bright gold band on his wrist. They were in a cockpit, holding hands, looking out at a field of stars. This is for the ship, Arian said, her voice small, and handed it to Asher. Asher took it, his throat tight. It is perfect. It goes right here. He taped it to the console, just below the main viewport. Scylla slid into the co-pilot's chair, strapping in. So, Asher said, looking at her. First lesson. Where to? Chairwoman. Just Scylla, she said. And I do not know. You are the Weaver. Surprise me. Asher smiled. He looked at the gold band on his wrist. S541. The code of his ancestors. The key to his past. The lock on his grief. He unclasped it. He held it for a moment. The heavy, ancient gold, warm in his hand. Then, he reached forward and placed it on the dashboard, just under Arian's drawing. It rattled once, then settled. The code, he said, his hand moving to the lattice controls, his fingers light, sure, and free. It belongs to the past. He looked at Scylla, at Arian, at Tamsin, his family, his crew. The future, he said, belongs to the pilot in the chair. He engaged the thrusters. The ship lifted, silent and smooth, leaving Apex Gate behind, and wove a new path toward the stars.